PC Perspective's coverage of CES 2015 is brought to you by Logitech. See the latest gaming peripherals at gaming.logitech.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is CES 2015, Day 2 of the Cleaning Lady Podcast. I'm Cleaning Lady Ryan Shrout.
I'm Cleaning Lady Matilda Maria San Jose Jalisco.
Josh Walworth.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
What do you got, Alan?
I'm Alan Mamatano.
Oh, good. Ken?
Ken.
Okay. Well, this is going swimmingly. You guys are on top of your comedy game. So it's day 2. We already posted one podcast. We had a lot of stuff yesterday. Today was more of kind of press conference day, if you will. We still had some other individual meetings, but we're going to go ahead. I don't think we have anything that's kind of under embargo anymore, so we don't have to be careful about what we discuss.
Hopefully not.
So I'm going to kind of go down the line of what we saw today, which basically starts us at the ASUS press conference, which combines your consumer electronics side of things, your phones, your tablets, your laptops, your phones. Did I say phones already? And then they announced quite a few, I guess, at least a handful of kind of desktop consumer Republic of Gamers branded things, but they didn't really talk about it at the press conference.
No, but I did mistake an R for an A.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
The font of the ROG font mixes R and A a little bit. I saw what you were seeing there, but when we looked at the other documentation. So I'll start with the consumer electronics side of things. So they announced the Zenfone 2. They announced
Zenfone Zoom.
Zenfone Zoom. It has the various optical zoom. We're not really interested in that as much. They did announce the Transformer book Chi.
Yeah. Chi.
In both in 3 sizes, like
what,
T300,
T100,
No.
and T90?
13, 10, and 9-inch, right?
I guess.
I think that's what it was.
I didn't think it went. Yeah, it's 13, I guess.
Yeah.
And these are all Core M based devices. No.
That's not true.
The 13 is Core M.
Yes.
The 10 and the 9 are Atom.
Cherry Trail, I think.
Probably. I think so.
I think.
Yeah. The 13 inch is the most interesting. So it's a convertible 2-in-1. It's a tablet with a dock station keyboard, as the Transformer books tend to be.
What you would expect a Transformer book
But
to
it's
be.
incredibly thin. They were bragging about battery life. They talked about performance. They kept comparing it to being better than Air, referring to the MacBook Air.
Until they went to the performance comparison, in which they switched to the iPad Air.
So they did graphics performance comparisons to the MacBook Air, I think.
No.
It was all...
They did size comparisons to the MacBook Air and then performance comparisons to the iPad Air.
Yeah. And the reason they did that is because it's using the Core M processor, which
they
is...
would lose.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've talked about the Yoga 3 Pro. It uses the Core M. It is an architecture based on Broadwell Y that is lower performance than the U parts, Haswell or Broadwell. And because of that, it doesn't win benchmarks compared to things like the MacBook Air or any Ultrabook that
The
is
higher
out there
voltage
today.
parts.
Right. Which is fine because it is a much lower voltage part, but it just makes it difficult to do comparisons because it's kind of a new segment for Intel, right? It's a way above the performance of an Atom, but it's below the performance of Core i5, what we typically have known it as. So I think they did one direct comparison of the Yoga 3 Pro, like 1.3, 1.25x faster
their Core
or
M
something.
implementation. Because
Yeah.
Core M is programmable with like TDP and clocks, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they could just have a slightly bigger heatsink and allow it to get run higher clocks for longer periods of times. Very, very clean, very sexy looking devices. And then the other 2 were based on Atom. Again, very neat devices. Anything else on the notebook side? I don't really. Those were the big highlights, right?
That was the big reveal.
Those were literally the only 3 things we talked about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then I didn't miss anything.
No.
On the consumer side, they did some interesting things, right? So
You mean the enthusiast side?
the enthusiast side, yes. Sorry. They announced some monitors, and a pair of them that kind of stand out, right? One is I'm scrolling down the website as I do this, and I just realized at the beginning of this, I completely forgot to say pcpro.com/live. We record these shows live.
And I'm Josh Walworth, not Maria Olafavo, San Jose.
Right, yeah.
Racists.
Yeah, people knew. People could guess that you weren't Maria.
It's not racist. It's merely an observation.
I agree.
That's what racists say.
Damn it, there's a lot of things on these pages. So
Yeah, people have been posting a lot of news on the site.
Not us.
well, no, I have.
I posted one thing,
But
it was major.
I've done
Was
13
it?
videos. How about
Okay.
you?
So the first thing is the PG27AQ. It's a 27-inch 4K monitor. It is an IPS screen, 3840 by 2160. IPS being a fantastic feature, great viewing angles, better color reproduction, and all that type of stuff. It is a G-Sync panel as well. So it's a 27-inch 4K G-Sync panel with IPS, right? And I believe this marks the first IPS G-Sync panel that has been announced, right?
Yes.
Now, the bad
well,
news is... Go ahead.
technically, Acer announced one yesterday.
That's right. The 144
Yeah,
hertz,
but, you know.
smaller. That was 25 by 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the first two, if nothing else. It has the same ID industrial design as the ROG Swift that's currently selling. So I think that's actually a good thing. I really like the way the new ones look. It's only 60 hertz, up to 60 hertz, right? So go ahead. You sound like you were going to say something.
And you'll never be able to find it in retail.
Well, yeah. So no idea on pricing, availability. The only thing they stated was second half
I
of
bet it's the same
2015.
price as the current Swift.
It's almost impossible for me to guess that because in the next 6 months, I think dramatic things are happening in the display market if everything goes as planned. If
Yeah.
AMD's FreeSync launches
That's
happen and push things down, then it may be that these partners of NVIDIA's on G-Sync displays have to be a little bit more aggressive with their pricing.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that honestly I've been waiting for, and perhaps everyone has, for at least the last 10 years. You remember back 2003, 2004, 2005, we suddenly got the less expensive LCD monitors that went up to 1920 by 1200.
Right.
They were still $1,200 to $1,500 at that time, but that was a huge jump from the CRTs in terms of viewing size, pixel density, just overall quality of image that we were just not used to. And then in the past 10 years, we've had really small jumps. I mean, yeah, we get to see some 144 hertz monitors, but the basic technologies have not really advanced LCDs from where we were in 2005. I had a 2005 monitor that I used for the past 10 years until I was fired from my job, and then they took it away. I wasn't able to take it home. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, there was nothing wrong with it as compared to most other new monitors of the time.
Sure.
But now we're finally getting to the point where we've got G-Sync, we've got FreeSync, we've got IPS panels that just look fantastic, high pixel density. We're now finally seeing above 60 hertz for these IPSs. We have LG has a 75 hertz ultra wide. We've got IPS and AHVA that are going up to 144 hertz. So this is absolutely fantastic for people who have been waiting for improvements in just how we see our computing, not just video cards, not just CPUs and frame rate, but how we're finally, the quality of pixels that are hitting our eyes just through light. Light.
But what about OLED?
Does somebody have a big OLED screen yet?
Oh, yeah, we see them every
affordable?
year on the show floor.
Oh, on the show floor, yeah. Yeah.
We did see that. We did see an 8-inch OLED. Can't talk about it yet. We saw an 8-inch
Yeah.
OLED. So that was one of the two monitors. And that's kind of interesting. The other one is the ASUS MG279Q. This is another 27-inch display. It's IPS, again, good. 2560 by 1440 resolution. This all sounds familiar. It's 120 hertz refresh rate. So an IPS 120 hertz refresh, 25 by 14. That's good stuff.
It is.
Less
Great
than the
stuff.
144 that Acer announced, but still pretty good. But it does not say that's not a G-Sync monitor, and it's not officially an AMD FreeSync monitor. But when I inquired about that, they said, well, it does support DisplayPort 1.2a plus, and DisplayPort 1.2a plus is part of Adaptive Sync is part of that. It's an optional part of that. Now, there was some Twitter conversation I had with some people online, and I think Robert Halleck from AMD said the list of monitors that they released earlier today was all the monitors that were certified for FreeSync. Right now, that doesn't mean that this monitor won't support FreeSync, but it does leave me some interesting questions that I'll ask them tomorrow when we talk to them. It's like, well, what does that mean? Is FreeSync a certification process now? Is it just Adaptive Sync? How does this work? Right? If this monitor says it supports Adaptive Sync, does it not just work with your thing? Well, we know it won't work with G-Sync, right? That's pretty obvious. But the idea would be that if this monitor supports that standard, that was kind of the idea, I thought, behind Richard Huddy and AMD and their promotion of, hey, this is an open standard and there's no licensing fee and all that kind of stuff. So I still believe at the end of the day, when this the ASUS MG279Q comes out, it will support the AMD variable refresh rate technology. So that's good. This would be a good time as any, I guess, to scroll down here to talk about the AMD. They put out a press release announcing the first shipping FreeSync monitors that include, as I scroll down here, we've got one BenQ, two LG, one Nixius.
Sure.
Anybody? Okay. Two Samsung and a ViewSonic. And these range from 1080p 144 hertz to 2560 by 1080 75 hertz,
That's
which is
21
which
by
is 21
9.
by 9.
Yeah, and 75 hertz. That's kind of interesting.
That's unique. It's unique to that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but it's needed.
I agree. Yeah. There's a 2560 by 1440 144 hertz, and then some 4K 60 hertz. So nothing over 60 hertz for 4K yet. And then the other interesting one is the 2560 by 1080 at 75 hertz. Both of those from LG, both in a 29-inch and a 34-inch form factor. Those are supporting FreeSync. Those are the ones that are announced. I imagine all these will be at AMD's booth when we go there tomorrow.
We can only hope.
I hope so, and hopefully they'll have like real games playing on it, and we can mess around with them and see. But again, if this is an open standard, if this is something that they are talking about, hey, there's no licensing fees, I'm very curious why they would not just say, hey, if that ASUS monitor supports it, yep, then make it part of the FreeSync family. We'll see. Maybe they learn that there's more to it, and they're kind of working on some of that stuff. So ASUS, they also announced, let's see, a mechanical keyboard, a new mouse. This is ASUS I'm talking about, not AMD. That's not a pleasant sound to make on the podcast, probably. 7.1 channel
keyboard.
Gaming headsets. We talked about all the rest of the stuff. Oh, there were a couple things from Lenovo we couldn't talk about last night, right?
Yes.
But we can talk about now.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think the most surprising thing we've seen at the show is the Levy Z laptop, which is it's a ThinkPad. I guess is a ThinkPad laptop made out of magnesium, lithium magnesium, or magnesium lithium, depending.
It's not a ThinkPad. It's a Lenovo.
Oh, it's not a ThinkPad.
Correct.
Okay, so it's just a Lenovo laptop, but it's a 13.3-inch screen, and it kind of had this holy crap moment where they said, hey, we want to show you this laptop. We're like, okay, great. They took us in this room and took this laptop out of this bag like it was some big deal.
They put hoods over you. They drove you around for a while.
They put hoods over our heads, moved us 6 feet to the right inside a different room, and then took the hood off. And they handed a laptop to me, and I didn't think it was real. Right? It weighed 1.7 pounds, which is not like it's light.
It was like a gutted laptop weight. It was like you took all the stuff out of a laptop shell and you picked up the shell.
Right.
That's what it feels like.
Or like you went to a furniture store and they had those dummy laptops sitting there that are just made out of cardboard.
Cardboard laptop.
I'm pretty sure it was a home fill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they handed it to you and like, well, okay, that's a cool casing. Like, and they say, oh, we'll open it up, right? And you open it up and it turns on.
It turns on,
and it's a laptop with Broadwell U in it and all that, good hardware goodness. And like I said, 1.75 pounds doesn't sound like super light because there are 2.7 pound laptops around all the time. But for some reason, the physical size of it with that weight
Yeah.
It was so not dense.
Yeah.
That it felt odd to hold it. Even
It was
actually.
like aerogel.
Kinda. Yeah.
But I'll go with
I mean, it just gets to that point where you hit like this threshold, right? Where it's like it's so light for its size
It's unreal.
that it feels wrong.
It felt unreal. It felt like it always felt like we were going to break it because it was so light, like it was made of balsa wood or something like that.
But I put it on my lap and opened it and started using it, and it was fine.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, fine to use.
And it's a little bit flexible, but it's the screen is
bonded to the shell.
Yeah, bonded to the shell, right? So you don't have to worry about cracking or breaking of that necessarily any more than anything else.
It does flex.
It does.
If you try to close the screen or open the screen just by one corner, it will flex, but it's designed to flex is the thing, right?
It's designed to flex but not break.
Yeah, flex but not break, right? So it's not if you can't make something that light that's rigid. Right?
How much was this going to be? I think it was like $14.
No, it was like
$12.99?
it was like $13 for the non-yoga-ish version and $15 for the yoga, I think.
The 2-in-1
because they make it in like a 2-in-1, like a
yeah.
yoga style with the hinge that flips around the other way, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
and it wasn't that much heavier either. Like the one with the
it was
hinge.
1.75 versus 2.05.
Yeah,
I think were the weight differences there.
and that one had a touch screen, right? The second one.
The second one had a touch screen.
Yeah.
We do have if you go to the website and you go, it's actually on the second page right now, or maybe it's on the first page, the bottom of the first page. We have a video of it, but it's one of those things it's really hard to like. I don't know.
Wait until it get it in the Best Buy.
Yeah, like you got to go pick it up because I can sit there and I can tell you, and they had a scale. We could put it on a scale, and it shows 1.75. So it doesn't really mean anything. I will say that the one kind of downside to it is that this is pointed out by somebody else, is that the texture and feel of the device is not quote premium feeling. Like it feels like plastic. Like it feels
Doesn't feel like luxury.
It's very thin. It's a very, very thin alloy, right? So it has like a...
Well, didn't we see that the Gigabyte, that their kind of high-end gaming luxury laptop, when you picked that up and felt it, it was a much different experience.
Gigabyte?
Yeah, when the one you saw today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember what we're talking about.
I don't remember picking that up.
Yeah.
You went over and looked at it. I don't think we did a video.
Yeah.
No. But it was different from, say, like the MSI.
Oh, you're talking about the Acer today at Digital Experience?
Nope.
I don't know what we're talking about
Anyway, well, don't worry about it.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. Like when you there's sometimes when you pick up a MacBook Air, it feels like a high-end device. And when you pick up something that's kind of made of very thin plastic, it feels different. Now,
this feels like a toy when you pick it up. It really
does.
Yeah,
it does. But I think that's kind of what will be necessary to have it meet those weight requirements. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no way around that.
This will be. When did they say it'd be available? April, March, April.
Yeah, in the middle of the year.
Something like that. So hopefully we'll get one of those in and play around with it. But a really, 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 really cool device. From Lenovo there. What else did we do today? Gigabyte. They announced two things. Josh, you want to talk about the motherboard the X99 SoC Champion?
Yes. SoC.
What did they do different on this? Any idea?
Boy, they did a lot of things differently with it. First of all, they went from 8 DIMM slots to 4, which does some nice things in there. There's shorter length in the leads, traces, and less electrical interference. The signal quality will be improved because you don't have 8 DIMM. This thing trying to drive 8 DIMMs. It's only driving 4. They're closer to the socket, so the traces are shorter.
Right.
A lot of the different design features all done to make sure, well, kind of the interesting thing, going from 2011 pins
right
to 2083. Is that correct?
So, yeah. So they actually the socket on the motherboard is different than a standard LGA 2011
Yeah, and we
socket.
didn't get a whole lot of light shown upon how this actually works. I mean,
Right.
does the actual processor itself have 2083 pads, or are they double pinning certain pads? We don't know. My guess is that there are more vacant pads on a processor that are just not
we know about,
often
really, yeah.
used. So this is an option for the enthusiast type motherboards to have a little bit extra power and better.
I mean, that's
ground.
really for like LN2 overclocking.
Yeah.
Right? Standard overclocking, I mean, definitely like normal users don't need that. Standard overclocking, you probably don't need that. If you're doing that super extreme crazy crap,
Then it's going
Then
to
you
give
take
you a
everything
couple
you
of
can
percent.
get.
Yeah. And where was the CMOS battery on that?
I don't know. But to clear it up, like most of the manufacturers do extra pins, right, on their 2011, but Gigabyte is doing more.
right? More extra, more betterer, I guess. You know, and they did SMT mount on the DIMM slots, another kind of.
Just looks super cool.
Yeah, I
does
mean,
look-
it does look smooth. I mean,
Which means, like,
everybody's...
if you look in the back of a motherboard today, and you've got like all those kind of like sharp points where the solder.
Yeah, it's not the
connects
solder.
through
I
and
mean,
the-
it's
well,
the
the
pins,
pins go through.
go all the way through.
It's kind of
And
amazing
you've got
that
the
there are
solder
that
points
many
on it.
through-hole components on modern motherboards.
Still, yeah. So they got rid of that, and they say that helps improve signal integrity on that type of stuff too. So that, I mean, that's neat. Again, it'll probably be a $300 to $400 plus
Oh,
motherboard.
it'll be at least a
super
$400
high end
motherboard.
enthusiasts there. And then they also announced the Bricks Broadwell units. The small form factor Bricks and Bricks S. The S being the one that can hold a 2.5-inch hard drive.
Storage.
Yeah, stands for storage, not hard drive, as I tried to say in the video. And these are cool, right? Literally and figuratively, they run Broadwell, so they're more power efficient. They have better performance, better graphics performance. I don't know anything about pricing. I assume they'll be relatively close to where the Haswell parts were
probably the same.
when they launched. So that was pretty neat.
Tiny
too.
bit smaller on each of the new SKUs than the old designs.
And the Core i7 version has
NFC.
which is interesting. I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, the use cases are like, I like the idea of you walk in, you set your phone on top of the bricks on your desk, and that's your login.
Yeah, but with
maybe?
how big phones are, they'd be bigger than the bricks.
Yeah, but you're just sitting on top of it, right? You know, whatever.
Come on.
That's fine. No biggie. It was Gigabyte. Alan, you saw Samsung today.
Yeah, I mean, they had a press conference, but as far as storage goes, we had seen everything we needed to at Storage Vision. It's just under NDA.
Okay, well, what did we see today that we can now talk about?
They launched what they call the SSD T1.
Okay.
It's basically an 850 EVO and an external enclosure connected over USB 3. It's about as simple an explanation as you can go, right?
Okay,
It's just,
yeah.
externally connected, right? But I don't know what they're using to bridge over to USB 3. I don't know if it's a kind of native thing or...
Did you ask them why they didn't go 3.1?
'Cause no one has 3.1 chipsets.
yeah,
out
it's not
shipping,
really... Yeah. Not only that, but they're claiming 450 meg per second, which is already pretty close to what the drive caps out at anyway.
But is that because of the interface, or I guess it's the
Yeah,
same
it's 5
interface.
gigabit. It's doing the 5 gigabit USB 3.0, not 3.1. So 450 is really nothing to sneeze at from an external device. It's faster than anything we've seen from like connected, anything we've tested, like even that Initech, like that dock with an 850 Evo plugged into it. You still only get like 300-ish or something like that. So this is getting 450,
Right.
right? So it's pretty speedy, and it's much more compact than any 2.5-inch SSD that's made into some kind of dock thing or put into some kind of an enclosure. It's pretty thin. It's basically like if you read the 850 Evo review, you notice the PCBs are like tiny for those drives. So they were able to take advantage of that and stick it in a much smaller enclosure just with a really small, few inch long USB 3 like flat ribbon-ish kind of cable. Cable looks pretty compact too, like really easy to throw in your bag kind of thing. I mean, it's just for people that want really fast, some kind of portable thing, right? And the other big deal is that it's I haven't been able to see this in person, like running on a system, but it's supposed to have a very elegant, like small app you fire up if you have turned on encryption. So it does hardware AES 256 and does it in a manner where like the passphrase or whatever the login is just like a thing that you launch. Like when you first plug it in, I guess the only thing you see is that you run it, you type in your password that communicates with the drive and does the unlock procedure or whatnot so you can get to the data, right?
A
So
user has a pretty good question. Is TLC even appropriate for long-term external storage?
It is, I would say, in the case where you're not doing like full drive writes per day and really cycling the flash a lot, right? Part of the discussion at Storage Visions I had with some people were there are companies considering making archival class flash stuff and basically just getting all of the crap flash, like the lowest bin flash from companies that they wouldn't put into a product to write a bunch to.
Yeah.
Because for archival, if you only write to it a few times, it's actually, 10-year shelf life is not even an issue for something like that, right? The JEDEC specs for like longevity of flash memory is supposed to be rated like at end of life after you've done all of the cycles it's rated for, then it's supposed to have like a 10-year shelf life, right? So it really does go far out, right? So for something like this, if it's that 3D, first of all, 3D VNAND, which is what's in this, has a lot more volume per cell than any of the planar stuff. So leakage is not as much of an issue over time, right? And not only that, but it's an external device. You're probably not writing to it an insane amount anyway. So yeah, I would trust something like this to put your stuff on and then leave it on a shelf for 10 years. Chances are the interface might have been phased out by the time
Sure.
by the time the data actually has decayed to the point where you have a hard time reading it. So yeah,
How much was that again?
It was 120, 180. I think was the launch price for the 240. And then it
Okay.
was 350 for a half a terabyte, and then 550 for a terabyte. So it's a little bit more than
Yeah.
the 850 Evo, right? Because you're paying for it's in a nice housing and stuff, and that kind of thing. Me personally, like if I was buying something like this, I would personally lean towards the flexibility of just having an enclosure and being able to stick an SSD in it.
Mhm.
Like I would just buy like an 850 Evo probably, right? But if I wanted a much more compact thing that I was carrying around all the time that was dedicated to be external,
Right.
then this is just naturally the way to go, right? It's just much smaller.
All right.
Yep.
I do want to point out one thing I forgot about at Gigabyte that we had a video of on the website. And that is the GTX 980 Water Force 3-way SLI concoction.
That behemoth that comes in a suitcase.
It ships in a suitcase.
It's like a good-looking suitcase too.
And it's
like
not a carry-on size suitcase. It's a larger than carry-on size
yeah.
suitcase. So this is it's a set of 3 GTX 980s that are water-cooled and self-contained water cooling kits, but the 120 millimeter radiator for each GPU and fan are in an external unit that sits on top of your case. I guess technically you could set it anywhere, but it's meant to sit on top of your case.
So you probably can't sit anywhere because of the way the tubes run.
Well, you could run them off to the side if you wanted to, I guess.
Could you?
Well, sure. They're just flexible tubing.
But they're connected to the thing, so it has to be above. It can't be, right?
What if they can be below or to the side?
Then you'd have it upside down.
I'm just saying you could set it off to the side and just have it hang there if you wanted.
It wouldn't look pretty, but hey, look at me.
So they're overclocked. They're like 1228 megahertz base clock parts. It's the housing unit has an LCD on the front for monitoring temperatures and fan speeds and pump speeds. It has a billy club for holding the 3 GPUs in place inside a case.
The far corners of them,
Right.
The unsupported corners, basically.
Correct. Yeah. But it is $29.99. It's $3,000
That's it?
for this.
That's a Titan Z.
No. You can
If
get more than
Johnny
one
C
Titan Z now.
was in charge, he'd see $29.99.
99.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But he's not. This is the wrong company.
This is correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I mean, $3,000. That's a significant markup over if you were to buy 3 980s individually and air cool them. But you also get a sweet suitcase and the bragging rights of having this thing set on top of your case. It's not small. Like that
It's going to
unit.
be real stupid to look back on in 10 years. That'll be fun.
It probably will.
If you
yeah.
buy
If
one
I'd
of those.
only invested that money in an IRA account.
We could say that about most of the computer crap we buy. I guess when it really
So how
comes down to it.
much is? Oh wait, so let's do quick math, right?
It's not going to turn out well.
There's
I mean,
no such
it's-
thing as quick
Let's
math.
say
Math.
let's say $600
But,
times
like,
3 is $1,800.
That's 1,800, and then the good water blocks are like 150. So times 3,
Okay.
like a 980
$1,900.
water block is like 150.
So you're spending another $1,000 on radiators.
No. Yeah, it's still steep,
I mean, yeah, it definitely
buy a
is.
360.
but it is a completely finished solution, and you just basically just
Yep.
stick it on.
It
top
is.
Of your
I
case
think it's cool looking.
And the
I
self-buy.
think very few
Yeah.
people will be able to justify the purchase, and then they're not dumb. They know that. They know they're not selling 7,500 of these a month.
Nope.
I don't think they're going to sell 75 of them. I'd like to know how many they made. That would actually be an interesting discussion.
Three.
But
They're not gonna tell you.
no, hell no, they're not going to tell me. What else did we see? Alan, you saw Silicon Motion?
Went and talked to Silicon Motion. We haven't done a post on it yet.
Okay, you want to save it for tomorrow? I mean,
But
it
there's
doesn't matter.
basically, let's see. Actually, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about it.
Okay, well then don't yet,
Yeah,
and we'll wait.
but it's cool stuff.
Okay, all right.
Well, tomorrow will certainly be a much more interesting podcast.
Yeah, there's other.
Because we have
there
two
is
products
other embargo
that-
stuff. Like there's a few other companies.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
There's a few other companies of stuff that like their press releases aren't coming out until like I think they're sitting in my email right now. Like they
First
just
day of the
got
show.
sent out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
These-
fair enough.
These guys are saving. They're kind of spreading it out more than they have in prior years. From,
Yeah.
at least on the storage front.
This morning, Intel did officially launch Broadwell U. We should point out the 15 watt and 28 watt variants of that processor. This is like the Core i5, Core i7, Core i3 processors that you'll see in standard notebooks. 2-in-1s or whatever. Not the Core M.
Well, not standard notebooks. Ultrabooks.
Well, okay, sure.
They're not the standard voltage Broadwell parts. Right.
Standard is very odd statement. Like, this is going to be the majority of where their inventory is going is in Broadwell U. But up to 28 watts. So, I mean, that's up there for a laptop, I think. You can look through the post. I'm not going to run through the clock speeds. Scott did a good job of kind of compiling all that on there. All dual core right now. No quad core options. Dual core hyper-threaded. No desktop announcements. It looks like we're going to skip Broadwell for the most part for desktop. Maybe have one or two options.
Broadwell Extreme, but much later.
That'll be
on.
next year.
Yeah.
Or at the very end of this year.
It's
Maybe
going to be fall to winter.
Yeah. We'll get one SKU of Broadwell for the consumer LGA, but really Skylake is what's important. The next architecture for that. So if you're holding off upgrading or something like that, Broadwell is not going to be the big selling point for you for processor performance in 2015 at the very least. SanDisk had the affordable SSD. Anything interesting about that? You want to talk about the low price that we got there?
Yeah, I mean the pricing was kind of low, right? For
Oh, okay.
MSRPs, right? Like it was
We're
definitely
talking about-
down there.
We're talking
right?
about 46 cents per gig, $110 for a 240 gig SSD, brand new.
The 120,
Announced.
the 120 is a little bit high. I think it runs above 50 cents a gig.
58.
Yeah, but it's still pretty cheap for 120 gig SSD as well, right?
$70.
Yeah, that's definitely down there. And realize these are the launch MSRPs for these drives, which this is probably the lowest.
So you
cost
expect
per
it to go
gig.
down?
You'd think it would go down, especially you're going to see sales or whatnot. So it's definitely as long as it's a decent performing SSD, which I mean we don't know all the facts until we've done a review, which we should shortly after CES hopefully. But as long as it's halfway decent, like that would be a very recommendable drive, right? Like
Right.
it's very low cost per gig. You just want an SSD, a decent one. Then
Yeah.
you go, like we always say on the podcast, right? It's just go if your threshold is just a decent SSD, go for the lowest cost per gig of one that doesn't have like really bad reviews, right?
Yeah.
And
we don't have reviews of this yet, but that could be a qualification for it then.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. We went to digital experience. Is that the next thing?
Yeah, but we can't talk
Do you wanna
about anything
talk
we saw
about-
there.
Cherry?
we can't talk about
Cherry
digital
Trail.
experience.
stuff
I
that
mean,
we
you
sell
can
isn't
mention
very
it.
big.
You can mention Cherry Trail. We don't know much about it. It's the
No.
update to
Kinda
the Atom
sucks.
line, upgrade to Bay
Bay
Trail.
Trail.
It'll be available when? Next-
They're starting to ship it, and we will see products in early Q2. And Intel promised
Promised. Okay.
that we would know more information about it. So it's kind of like Affordable Care Act. We'll
God.
read it after we pass it.
We're not doing this.
We're not going political.
No,
Fine.
no, not doing that. Too tired.
But yeah, we know that it has improved graphics. It's a 14 nanometer part.
Yeah.
It's I'm assuming that the CPU cores have been improved as well. And,
Yeah, I honestly don't like. Even I'm trying to think like, what do I know that I'm not supposed to say? And I don't think I know anything about it.
Yeah, they haven't talked about it extensively at all.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in
I don't
tablets.
think it's
We
very
may
dramatic,
see some stuff, the lower end, in some phones.
Okay.
We did see some interesting phones from ASUS that utilized
That's true.
the Atom with their Zen
Yep,
phone
yep.
too. So things are looking a little bit better for Intel
Yeah.
and low power. But we'll see if it's just like NVIDIA. Hey, we've got this part. It looks incredible in certain instances, but
Right.
we can't sell them.
Before we kind of, Alan, you just posted up a little thing here on an IOSafe 1515 Plus,
Yes.
which is a fireproof, waterproof NAS RAID.
Yeah, we reviewed a couple of them.
We have.
Yeah.
So what's new about this one that they're kind of talking about for the first time at CES?
Well, it's Synology 1515 Plus inside of a fireproof box, which just makes it magically an IOSafe 1515 Plus, right?
All right.
But it's 5 bays,
5 bays, 3.5-inch hard drive bays,
quad gigabit Ethernet connectivity. So this is
4 gigabit Ethernet ports in the back. Okay.
Yes. So as long as you have something else that can handle multi-link Samba stuff like Windows Server, that kind of thing, on your network,
Right.
or an ESX server for VMware or something like that. So basically, it's small business, medium business kind of thing. You want to have data that's active, maybe so active that you can't back it up instantaneously, that sort of thing. But you also want it as disaster-proof as you can make it. Right, so you put it in a fireproof box, right? That's also
Sure.
waterproof, right? So in the case of like fire or a flood or something like that, the logic for the thing will probably fry, right? But the hard drives themselves are inside of a cage that is
Right.
waterproof, and then that cage is inside of a fire, one of those materials that burns off in fire and sacrifices itself.
Ablative.
Yes, ablative.
Nice. That's a good SAT word.
Good. That is a good word.
Thanks. It's all those X15 documentaries I've watched over my lifetime.
Yeah, so as long as you have hardware that is sufficient to get the full speed, you can actually get like 450 meg per second throughput out of this guy. And then if you enable hardware encryption, which it has on board, I think there's an Atom in there, but it has some kind of hardware.
Yeah, it's C2000 from the press release I was reading over your shoulder.
Yeah. So it'll do hardware crypto and like AES-56, and that will limit your write speeds to around 200 meg per second max. But you still end up getting like 450 on the reads, even if it's encrypted data. But it's good to have crypto there as well, because then the entire thing is encrypted. So if somebody steals a thing and powers it down at all, then somebody has to re-enter the key, obviously, to get all the information back active again. It'd be kind of hard to get it out of your building without unplugging it. So, that kind of thing.
Right.
And there's other connectivity, like Synology NASs generally are pretty good about having other connectivity as well. So there's like 4 USB 3.0 ports out the
Yeah, I
back.
saw that.
There's a couple of eSATA ports out the back, so you can hang additional storage off of this thing and have it go through all the NAS front end and appear just as additional devices you can access and that kind of thing. And there's
Plus,
even
it's got a Kensington lock port.
Kensington lock.
Can I ask you? So you've got data redundancy being one of the reasons you have 4 LAN ports, 4 gigabit ports.
For redundancy, like resiliency, like you can have one of the links go down.
Right.
Like you don't
Okay.
necessarily have to have quad gigabit just to get the full throughput. You can
have multiple clients accessing it.
You could also
getting
do
multiple
that.
throughput out. Of it.
Or you could just rely on what's considered failover, which is like originally when you had multiple NICs and server hardware, it wasn't necessarily to get the full throughput from all of them at the same time. It was the second one might just sit there on standby until the primary one link fails for any reason, and then the standby one picks up.
Yeah, that makes
right?
sense.
So it supports all that sort of stuff, depending on how you want to hook it up. Not the kind of thing you just have sitting at your house generally, but for a business, it definitely has a purpose. And they have some method, which I haven't fully researched yet, but like they employ a method for the Synology NASs where you can link, you can kind of daisy chain them together. I think 4 or 5 of them. So they claim you can fit up to 90 terabytes total in like one volume. Basically, like they would all appear as a single volume, like multiple units chained together. So 90 terabytes is nothing to sneeze at, especially considering they would all be in fireproof enclosures.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's
How much is this again? How much I got to pay for this?
Actually, I don't even think that's in the press release.
Oh, okay.
Was it?
I don't
Maybe.
know.
If you have to ask.
You have to ask. I mean, it's you pay a premium for the fireproof portion.
Oh,
of it.
sure.
And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
1515 Plus is not a cheap. It's like it's like Synology's highest end, one of their highest end NASs, right? So
Yeah.
You're talking business pricing when you get to that point. But they do throw in like, I think it's a year or 3 years or 5 years or something of like a drive savers data recovery in case it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it wouldn't be because the drives themselves should be just fine on the inside of the thing.
Sure.
They've done in prior. They don't do it anymore, but in prior CESs they would always do crazy stuff like, light the thing on fire and dump it in water and like pick it up with the freaking backhoe or whatever and drop it from 20 feet in the air and all this other stuff, and then like
Sounds like we should do that.
and then they took the drive
say
out
that
of
every
it.
time.
Took the drive out of it after all that was said and done, and like they could read the data, right? So
Right. All right.
yeah,
That's cool. You know what you could use with that 4 gigabit port NAS? Gigabit power line networking adapters.
Oh, did you see those somewhere?
Scott posted this story up that I thought was interesting. They actually have the D-Link released the DHP 701 AV that can go up to 2,000 megabits per second, which is odd because there's a single gigabit Ethernet port on the device. But they announced that one that is probably rated at 2 gigabits. So you'll like this, Alan. They're using all 3 prongs of the plug now for data transfer.
They're calling it MIMO.
Yeah, Powerline MIMO. But they announced some gigabit ones and then some 2 gigabit ones. I don't really understand how you have a 2 gigabit connection when you have one Ethernet port on either side.
Maybe
of
it breaks
these
out to 2
adapters.
gigabit.
Maybe I don't know. I like to try these again. Maybe it got better. Probably it didn't,
Probably,
but maybe it got better.
Well, your issue with them was that the transformers kept blowing up in them.
Yeah, they just kept dying. I kept having to buy replacement units.
You would imagine they'd figured that part out.
Maybe.
By now.
Maybe that's true. We did see a couple cool things at Digital Experience. I don't think nothing we can talk about yet. We'll talk about tomorrow. A couple
And
things
they're
from
all
Dell.
pet related.
They're all what?
Pet related.
Oh yeah,
Some things are pet related.
I did find some new accessories for my dogs. But we saw a couple of cool, really cool devices from Dell. They're not the videos and the stuff we talked about is under NDA, but like if you didn't sign NDA, you can still see them. These devices have been announced, like they've been discussed. The Dell XPS 13 and the Dell Venue 7000, right, tablet. So we'll have information on those tomorrow and our impressions of them, which are positive. Based on using them, just kind of playing around with them. Because Dell has a press conference tomorrow that kind of covers all that. But very, very cool stuff there. I think that's pretty much it. We can give you guys a short preview over tomorrow. Let me mention here, because I know watching the stats come in that a lot of people have been joining in late. And that's our fault because we're not scheduling these things correctly. We never know when we're going to record the podcast while we're at CES. Point out, again, if you go to pcper.com/subscribe, right now you get your form with your name and email address. We send out an email 10, 15, 20 minutes before we actually start doing the podcast live. If you missed any of this podcast, you can go to youtube.com/pcper. We will have this video on there relatively soon tonight. Depending on how well the internet upload works. And then we'll have the audio version at pcper.com/podcast as well. So, and also if you could just go to pcper.com, you can see all of our news stories that the team here and the teams at home are doing an excellent job with. In terms of our schedule for tomorrow, we have a crap ton of stuff. And I'm going to mention all these companies we're going to see, and expect at least 20 to 30% of those meetings to fall through due to timing and scheduling. But we'll have some kind of representation of these. ASUS, Patriot, Corsair. Hold on, these are small enough I can see. SanDisk, Zotac, NZXT, Crucial, Cooler Master, Sapphire, Intel, AData, Diamond, OCZ, AMD, Philips.
That's it?
That's one day.
That's it?
So that's it. That's it. That's all the stuff we got to do, and then we'll be resting tomorrow.
So we have 9 guys covering all this, right?
Yep. The other 5 are sitting behind the camera, waiting patiently for their chance to do the podcast.
Oh, I see.
So that's going to be pretty crappy. So we're going to get off here. I know it's a shorter episode, but that's fine. We got to edit a couple videos, make a couple posts, and then go to bed and start all the routine up tomorrow. So we really appreciate you guys. We're getting a lot of good traffic on the site. Like I said, PCPro.com or PCPro.com/CES if you want to get just the CES posts, but really most of the stuff on the site is CES. We have some reviews queued up that we're kind of been holding off because it'll just get lost in the shuffle, in the stream of stuff going on at CES. But thank you for everybody who's joined us on the live streams, for hanging out in the chat room. Again, sorry for the short notice on the podcast, but we will attempt to... we're not going to be able to give you more notice on the podcast. Really.
No, but tomorrow certainly will be more interesting.
We'll have
not that it wasn't uninteresting tonight,
Right.
That it
but tomorrow,
uninteresting.
You be quiet.
double negative, sort of.
Yeah, take a nap.
Nobody doesn't like Sarah Lee.
Exactly.
Right. So
And
that's
the day has come full circle.
and now it's time to end our show. Thank you guys again for joining us. PCPro.com. Find all that cool stuff there. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
See ya.